How people speak English. Leo often found himself in a peculiar linguistic predicament, a silent observer in a bustling English-speaking world. He devoured English books, effortlessly followed complex documentaries, and understood intricate movie dialogues with remarkable clarity. Yet, when it came to actually articulating a response, forming coherent sentences, or engaging in even the simplest conversation, his tongue would stubbornly tie itself into knots, refusing to cooperate. This deep understanding contrasted sharply with his inability to express himself verbally. This frustrating barrier, the gap between comprehension and verbalization, felt like an invisible wall. He knew the words, possessed the grammar, but the spontaneous flow of conversation eluded him completely. It was as if his brain had a superb receiving antenna but a defunct broadcasting system, leaving him isolated in moments where interaction was essential. He yearned to bridge this chasm and truly participate. He began to deeply reflect on how people speak English. It wasn't just about knowing vocabulary or rules, it was about rhythm, intonation, and spontaneous construction. People didn't translate in their heads, they simply spoke. He realized his focus had been too much on passive intake and not enough on active output, which was a crucial distinction he needed to internalize immediately. A radical idea sparked: how to talk at home to yourself. This seemed peculiar at first, even a little silly, but the logic was sound. No judgment, no pressure, just pure, unadulterated practice. His home, a sanctuary of quiet reflection, would become his private language laboratory. He decided to embrace the strangeness and commit fully to this unconventional method of self-improvement. His initial attempts were awkward, halting, and often punctuated by long silences. He would stand in front of his mirror, a silent audience, and describe his day. I woke up, early, he'd stammer. The words felt foreign on his tongue, chunky and unyielding, far from the fluid expressions he desired. It was a humbling but necessary beginning for his journey. Gradually, these silent conversations transformed. He started narrating his actions. I am pouring coffee, I need to clean the table. He described objects, reviewed articles he read, and even debated imaginary opponents on various topics. The house echoed with his solo monologues, a symphony of improving articulation. This constant verbalization began to slowly chip away at his inhibitions. The self-consciousness slowly eroded. He realized no one was listening, no one was judging. This freedom allowed him to experiment with different sentence structures, vocabulary, and even accents. The simple act of speaking aloud, even to himself, started to reconfigure his brain's pathways for active English production, making the sounds more natural. He felt a newfound comfort with his own voice. He understood that spontaneous self-talk, while beneficial, needed structure. He needed an English study plan for talking, a detailed roadmap for targeted improvement. He wasn't just aimlessly babbling, he was purposefully building a stronger foundation. This strategic approach would ensure his practice was efficient and directly addressed his weaknesses. A clear plan felt empowering. His plan incorporated daily themes. Mondays were for describing past events, Tuesdays for future plans, Wednesdays for expressing opinions. He also dedicated time to specific pronunciation challenges. This systematic approach ensured comprehensive coverage of different tenses and conversational functions. It transformed his isolated practice sessions into highly productive learning opportunities. His progress became noticeable. The plan also included dedicated listening practice, not just for comprehension but for mirroring intonation and speed. He would listen to podcasts and then immediately try to rephrase what he heard in his own words, out loud. This active listening component further refined his pronunciation and made his speech sound more natural. He was actively absorbing and reproducing English patterns. He began to practice how to talk in English in simulated real-life scenarios. He'd imagine ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or engaging in small talk at a party. These mental rehearsals, spoken aloud, prepared him for actual interactions, reducing the shock of unexpected questions. He built confidence through these proactive role plays within his own mind. To effectively how to practice English, he started recording his self-talk sessions. Listening back was initially cringe-worthy, highlighting every stumble and mispronunciation. However, it also provided invaluable feedback, allowing him to identify specific areas for improvement. He saw his progress over time, witnessing a tangible evolution in his fluency and clarity. This self-assessment was key. This recording habit became his most critical tool. He could pinpoint specific sounds he struggled with or sentence structures that always tripped him up. It was like having a personal language coach available 24/7, providing objective insights into his verbal performance. The discomfort of listening to himself faded, replaced by analytical curiosity and determination. He also developed strategies for how to remember words. Instead of rote memorization, he focused on using new vocabulary immediately in sentences, integrating them into his daily self-talk. He created vivid mental images associated with words, linking them to personal experiences. This active recall significantly improved his long-term retention of new terms. Flashcards were still useful, but he made them interactive. He wouldn't just read the word, he'd say it aloud, use it in a short sentence, and then invent a mini-story around it. This multi-sensory approach anchored the words more firmly in his memory, making them readily available for spontaneous use. Words became tools, not just abstract concepts. He also paid attention to collocations, words that naturally go together. Learning make a decision rather than just make a decision separately helped his sentences sound more natural and fluent. This focus on natural groupings accelerated his ability to form idiomatic expressions. His speech began to acquire an authentic, native-like quality, surprisingly quickly. His overarching goal was simple: learn English, but specifically, to speak it. He knew true mastery wasn't just about passive understanding. It required active participation, the ability to express nuanced thoughts and feelings in real time. This distinction propelled him forward, urging him to convert his vast reservoir of passive knowledge into active, usable communication skills. He realized the initial statement, "I understand English but I can't speak well," was a common lament, but not an insurmountable one. It was a phase, a temporary barrier, not a permanent disability. He just needed the right approach and persistent effort to transition from a proficient listener to a confident speaker. His journey was proof of this truth. The daily practice, even if only for 15 minutes, compounded over weeks and months. His fluency improved remarkably. The pauses became shorter, the vocabulary more diverse, and his pronunciation clearer. Each self-conversation, each recorded session, added another brick to the edifice of his speaking ability. He was building something substantial, piece by piece. He started seeking out low-stakes opportunities to speak. A brief interaction with a tourist, asking for directions in a cafe, or simply greeting a neighbor in English. These small victories, though seemingly insignificant, bolstered his confidence immensely. They were real-world validations of his solitary efforts. Each successful interaction fueled his desire for more. The reason why you should practice speaking became glaringly obvious through his own transformation. Speaking unlocked opportunities, new friendships, deeper cultural immersion, and enhanced professional prospects. It transcended mere communication, it was about connection, about truly engaging with the world around him. His life was visibly enriched by this newfound skill. Without speaking, his understanding, however profound, remained largely theoretical, a private realm. Speaking transformed it into a tangible, shared experience. It was the bridge that connected his internal linguistic world to the external reality, allowing him to navigate and interact meaningfully. This active engagement was the true reward of his hard work. Leo vividly remembered the frustration of wanting to contribute to a conversation but being unable to form the words, feeling a sudden surge of regret. That crippling feeling had been a significant motivator. He never wanted to experience that particular form of linguistic paralysis again, making his commitment to consistent practice unwavering. He encouraged others, often sharing his story of talking to himself. He explained that fluency wasn't about perfection, but about the willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. The key was consistent, deliberate practice, embracing every stumble as a stepping stone towards greater articulation. His personal journey inspired many. His journey emphasized that becoming a fluent English speaker was a marathon, not a sprint. There were days of incredible progress and days of frustrating plateaus. But the unwavering commitment to his English study plane for talking kept him moving forward, celebrating small victories and learning from setbacks. Perseverance was his secret weapon. He learned to treat his errors not as failures, but as valuable data points. Each mistake told him where he needed to focus his next practice session. This positive reframing of errors accelerated his learning process, making him fearless in his attempts to express himself, even if imperfectly. His growth mindset was truly transformative. The notion of how to talk in English gradually shifted from a daunting challenge to an exciting opportunity. Every conversation, whether with himself or others, became a chance to refine his skills, to experiment with new expressions, and to grow more comfortable in the language. He embraced every chance to speak. His memory for words also dramatically improved. By actively using new vocabulary, rather than passively acknowledging it, the words cemented themselves into his long-term memory. He discovered that the act of recalling and producing a word in conversation was far more effective for retention than simply reading it repeatedly. Leo found that creating small, everyday scenarios to narrate aloud was incredibly effective. Describing his morning routine, planning his grocery list, or even commenting on the weather, all became opportunities for practical English usage. This integration of English into his daily life made the learning process seamless and organic. He discovered the power of imagination in his English journey. By visualizing himself speaking fluently in various situations, he mentally prepared for real-world interactions. This mental rehearsal built a strong foundation of confidence and reduced anxiety when actual speaking opportunities arose. It was like practicing before the big game. He also focused on the emotional aspect of language learning. Overcoming the fear of making mistakes was paramount. He learned to laugh at his own linguistic blunders, realizing that most native speakers were patient and appreciative of his efforts, not critical. This acceptance of imperfection liberated him. His English study plan for talking evolved as he progressed. Initially focused on basic sentence structures, it later incorporated more complex grammar and idiomatic expressions. The plan was dynamic, adapting to his growing proficiency and continuously challenging him to reach higher levels of linguistic sophistication. It was a living document. Leo began to explore different speaking styles. He mimicked accents from his favorite English-speaking YouTubers and podcasters, not to adopt them permanently, but to understand the nuances of spoken English. This playful experimentation broadened his phonetic range and made his pronunciation more versatile and natural-sounding. It added a fun dimension. He learned that context was king when it came to remembering words. Instead of isolated lists, he learned words within phrases and sentences, understanding their usage in real-world contexts. This contextual learning approach dramatically improved his ability to retrieve and use vocabulary appropriately in spontaneous conversation. Words found their natural habitat. The concept of how to practice English became deeply ingrained in his daily routine. It wasn't an extra task, it was an integral part of his life, like brushing his teeth or eating meals. This consistency, even on days he felt tired, was the bedrock of his progress and ultimate success in speaking the language. He also sought out online language exchange partners. Initially terrifying, these conversations pushed him beyond his comfort zone. The real-time interaction, the need for immediate responses, forced his brain to process and produce English at a much faster rate. These exchanges were invaluable for true fluency. The conversations with native speakers provided immediate feedback on his pronunciation and grammar. They gently corrected him, and he eagerly absorbed their advice. This direct interaction solidified his understanding of natural phrasing and colloquialisms, which are often difficult to grasp from textbooks alone. He learned authentic English rapidly. He started a small English journal where he wrote down new words and phrases he encountered, along with sentences using them. This active writing process reinforced his vocabulary and grammar, translating passive knowledge into active production. It also served as a record of his linguistic journey. The advice why you should practice speaking resonated profoundly with him. He saw how many opportunities he had missed simply because of his inability to express himself. Now, those doors were opening. Professional networking, travel experiences, and personal relationships were all enriched by his improved speaking skills. His confidence soared. He no longer hesitated to initiate conversations or volunteer answers in English-speaking environments. The fear of embarrassment had been replaced by a genuine enthusiasm for communication. He realized that the journey from understanding to speaking was less about talent and more about sheer determination. He even started thinking in English, a clear sign of deep immersion and growing fluency. His internal monologue shifted from his native language to English, making the transition to spoken English almost effortless. This cognitive shift was a significant milestone in his linguistic development. Remembering words became easier because they were now part of his active mental toolkit. He wasn't just storing them, he was utilizing them daily. The constant retrieval and application of vocabulary solidified its place in his long-term memory, ensuring they were ready for instant use. His English study plan for talking wasn't rigid, it allowed for spontaneity. Sometimes, he'd find himself speaking English to his pet or narrating a cooking show, just for fun. This playful engagement kept his motivation high and reinforced the idea that English was a living, breathing language for communication. He realized that mastering how people speak English meant embracing the imperfections and nuances of natural conversation. It wasn't about textbook perfect grammar all the time, but about clear communication and connection. This realistic perspective relieved immense pressure and allowed him to speak more freely. He celebrated every small victory, successfully ordering coffee in English, understanding a joke, or holding a 5-minute conversation without stumbling. These incremental successes were crucial for maintaining motivation and proving to himself that his dedicated practice was indeed yielding tangible results. The initial feeling of "I understand English but I can't speak well" transformed into a distant memory. He now spoke English with a fluidity that once seemed impossible, a testament to the power of consistent effort and a well-structured plan. His transformation was complete, but his learning continued. He became an advocate for speaking practice, emphasizing its irreplaceable role in language acquisition. He firmly believed that active verbalization was the bridge between passive knowledge and true fluency, the essential ingredient that many learners often overlooked or feared. Practice truly made perfect. Leo's story became a beacon of hope for countless others struggling with similar challenges. He demonstrated that anyone, regardless of their starting point, could achieve speaking proficiency with dedication and the right strategies. His journey was a living embodiment of linguistic perseverance and triumph. He often joked that his mirror had become his first English teacher, patiently listening to his every awkward attempt. This light-hearted approach helped him maintain a positive attitude throughout his learning process, even during moments of frustration or doubt. Humor became a powerful coping mechanism. The importance of why you should practice speaking now resonated deeply within his being. It was not merely an academic exercise, it was a pathway to a richer, more connected life. He had unlocked a new dimension of experience through his voice. His journey underscored that true learn English meant engaging all facets of the language, especially the productive skill of speaking. Reading and listening laid the groundwork, but speaking erected the structure of real communication. It was the crowning achievement of his efforts. He encouraged learners to identify their personal learning style and adapt their English study plan for talking accordingly. What worked for one person might not work for another. Self-awareness about their strengths and weaknesses was vital for creating an effective and sustainable practice routine. He started attending local English conversation groups, no longer just for listening, but for active participation. The lively discussions and diverse perspectives further enhanced his linguistic agility and exposed him to a wider range of accents and speaking styles. It was real-world training. His ability to remember words improved exponentially through these real-time interactions. When he used a new word successfully in a conversation, its memory became deeply etched. The immediate context and emotional connection cemented the vocabulary in a way no flashcard ever could. Leo's transformation from a silent English comprehender to a confident, articulate speaker was complete. His story stands as a powerful testament to the fact that with dedication, a strategic English study plan for talking, and the courage to speak, anyone can bridge the gap between understanding and true verbal fluency.